Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Monday morning. I hope you're having a good one wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. As always, thank you very much for joining me. I really do appreciate it on what is the morning after Arsenal's 1-1 draw at Chelsea in the Premier League. That was I was going to say that was quite some game, but I'm sitting here now, probably 16, 17 hours after the full-time whistle was gone. And I'm still not quite sure how to sum that up. I don't know if I can even describe it as a game because it didn't really feel too much like a game of football. It was a game of something. I'm not sure football really is the word that sort of comes to mind at the end of it. So I'm going to try and assess it in today's show. Lots of you have been getting in touch and giving your sort of thoughts on what you saw and your overriding emotions of the performance, the result, what it means, all that sort of stuff. So I've pulled quite a lot of those together and we'll go through those towards the end of the show because I think it's really, really interesting to sort of get the level of sort of opinion and differences almost in terms of how Arsenal approached that game, what the result was. So I'll share some of those at the end of the game. I'll go over my player ratings. Obviously, I did the sort of immediate match reaction video from the press box yesterday after the game, with including my ratings. But if you haven't seen that, I'll go over them again. We'll look at what Mikel's had to say. Lots and lots of stuff to get stuck into. This is going to be a struggle for me, this one, I think, because I normally sit here and I try and analyse the game in the sort of cold light of day after it's happened. But I'm still struggling to really sort of put my finger on exactly what that was yesterday at the Bridge. See, exactly. I'm literally struggling to sort of describe it even now in terms of exactly how I viewed it. I was sitting right behind, and I mentioned this in my video yesterday, I was sitting right behind the bench yesterday, so directly behind Arteta and the coaching staff and the substitutes at that sort of level. And you really get the impression down there, normally I was sitting further back for press conferences, you really got the impression just how fast and how breakneck speed that football match was played at yesterday and how very little football was actually played. You could just feel it. And my overriding emotion at the full-time whistle yesterday, and I still kind of feel it now, is I was just delighted that the game was done. I was still frustrated at the fact that Timber had taken that cross from Hincapié off Gyökeres's head. But aside from that, I was just like, I was watching the players go over to the away fans and head down to the tunnel, and I was just like, I'm really happy that's done. I'm frustrated that we didn't get 3 points because there was an opportunity to get 3 points against 10 men, of course. But I was just like, no one got sent off, not lost any players to suspension. No one got injured, seriously injured, thankfully, because that easily could have happened with the way Chelsea was playing. And we've got an okay point against a team who were second in the Premier League, who were so up for it, so determined to close the gap at the top of the table. And we sort of come through it with no harm done. And that's kind of how I feel about it now as well. It could have been better. Of course, it could have been better. No doubt about that. When you play against a team who had a player sent off in the first half, no matter who that team is and where you're playing, you want to take advantage and you want to win. But this is football. It doesn't happen all the time. You can't do that all the time. Look at the other day. Everton had a player sent off inside 10 minutes at Old Trafford and still went and won. There's been countless occasions when that sort of stuff happens. Arsenal played a very good Chelsea side, and I really do think this is a very good Chelsea side. I didn't like the way they played football yesterday, I have to say, and how they went about it, but you've got to give them credit. They were so up for it. They knew this was a big opportunity for them. They're a young team. They're full of emotion. They kind of remind me of where Arsenal were a few years ago. You could sense that. The crowd are beginning to believe something's happening at Chelsea. You got the sense of that at Stamford Bridge yesterday. It was just a really, really difficult afternoon for an Arsenal side who were not at their best. And it was very clear they weren't at their best. And they were missing some really crucial players as well. Being without the two centre-backs was such a massive thing. You had two very young players playing at centre-back who had never played together before in the Premier League. And it was a really tough occasion for them. And I felt like that sort of edginess and nervousness just kind of spread through the team. And that's no massive surprise that happened. It just felt like Arsenal never really got going. They were never allowed to get going. I mean, the tone was set straight away. I mean, Cucurella goes through Saka straight away, no yellow card. Zubimendi gets booked about a couple of minutes later for something no worse than what Cucurella got away with. Caicedo, who was running around like an absolute madman from the start, shoves Jurriën Timber over right in front of the benches where we were sitting absolutely the most blatant foul you've ever seen, gets away with it. And that just set the tone. Chelsea were allowed to start getting away with things. And I think that ultimately led to the Caicedo red card as well, because he felt like he was being given free rein to do what absolutely ever he wanted, which was ridiculous for Anthony Taylor. And I think he has to take a proportion of the blame for what followed with Caicedo, because he should have stamped out what he was doing straight away, and he didn't. And it just all built up into this massive crescendo of a match that was just dominated by fouls and yellow cards and stoppages and everything like that. There was no real football that was being allowed to be played. And I know you can probably sit there and say, well, Arsenal should have been able to play football, should be good enough to be able to play football. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're just not at your best. And Arsenal weren't at their best. They were missing some key players at the back, which, as I said, I think definitely played into how Arsenal performed and the sort of edginess that they had. And they played against a Chelsea side who you've got to hold your hands up to at times and say that they are a tough team to play against. And they're not there. They're not a fluke. They're not second, or they weren't second going into the weekend as a fluke. They were second because they deserved to be there, because they've been on a really good run, been building a lot of momentum. They've done it without their best player as well in Cole Palmer. And they're a good side, and they're coming up, and they're going to be there and thereabouts for the next few seasons, Chelsea. They should be, for the money that they've spent. So I'm just not absolutely devastated by what that Arsenal dropped 2 points. I'm frustrated, but I'm not distraught. I'm more happy that Arsenal just got through this game with no massive harm done, that they didn't lose. They kept their 6-point lead over Chelsea. They're 5 points clear of Manchester City. They've chalked off another really difficult away game in the Premier League. They're 17 games unbeaten. It's been a really tough, demanding week, and they've come through it pretty well, I have to say. So that's my overriding emotion on this game. And when you sort of look at the numbers behind it, you know, it was very, very tight. Arsenal had the bigger chances. We know that. You know, it was a very good goal by Marino, brilliantly made by Saka. There was one real sort of moment of quality that Arsenal produced in the final third, was Bukayo Saka setting up the goal for Marino. You know, Marino was close to getting the winner late on with the shot that Gyökeres nearly got the rebound on. You had Martinelli shot in the first half. Chelsea didn't really offer too much in an attacking sense. I think there was that one chance for Esteval in the first half when, I think, was it Nkape or Mosquera, one of the two centre-backs played a really poor clearance. It just fell to Esteval, and he put it over. I think Chelsea would have obviously been more of a threat in the second half had they not been down to 10 men. So it's understandable that their threat dried off a little bit. But it was a pretty even game. And that's why I just feel like a point was probably a fair result. I think the big disappointment for Arsenal and for Mikel Arteta, and I referenced this in my video yesterday, Mikel referenced it straight away in his press conference, which didn't surprise me as well, is that you would have known at half-time, he would have sat those players in the changing room at half-time, and he would have said to them, right, they are going to want to even this up. They are going to target our players who are on a yellow card. Don't do anything stupid. Don't allow them to try and do what they're going to try and do. Stay calm. Keep your heads. Don't give them anything. Just try, get into this half and then take advantage of the extra man. That's exactly the message that he would have sent out. And he said it afterwards. That was the message he sent out. Within 2 minutes of the halftime whistle going, Arsenal, Nkape, who was on a yellow card, had got involved in an incident and given away a free kick and left Chelsea player arriving on the floor who was clearly trying to target a player who had already been yellow card. So they gave away a stupid free kick. From that free kick, David Raya came out when he probably shouldn't have done, made a good save in the end, but gave away a corner, and then Arsenal concede from the corner. You know, it was the worst possible start to a second half. And it would have been exactly what Mikel Arteta was telling his team to avoid to do. And I could see the look on his face when the goal went in, because as I said, we were right behind him, and he was just like turned to Albert, and they were just like, oh, for God's sake, you know, how have we managed to do that? And then it was about getting yourselves level, and they did get themselves level. And in the end, look, a point is a point. When you look at what Mikel had to say afterwards, he said, I think it was a proper London derby, really tense. You could sense from the beginning that every duel, every action had something on it. The two teams were willing to win. There wasn't much football, a lot of stops, free kicks, yellow cards, not a lot of fluidity. But obviously, after sending off Caicedo, we wanted to settle the game. We didn't manage to do that. We had 4 more yellow cards. Those players were obviously targeted in order to even the game up in terms of numbers. At half-time, we said, let's push it now, get what we have to do. And we were very clear on our intention and how we were going to start to dominate the game. Then in the first action, long ball, free kick, corner, and we concede from a set piece. Then the momentum shifted, and ultimately we had to react to it managed to get some good spells without having too much momentum. We scored a goal. After that, we had 2 or 3 chances, but lacked certain detail, especially in the manner that we attacked. On the sort of the week that it's been for Arsenal with Spurs, Bayern, Chelsea away. So it's been a big week, starting with a derby, then to play Bayern 3 days later. We lost the players in those games. Today we had to play a partnership. Hadn't played in a really difficult match. Captain is still not here. The number 9 is still not here. Kai is not here. We lost Leo in midweek, but the team had to react. Overall, it's been a positive week because the difficulty has been immense. But I have this flavour that we should have won the game and we haven't. That's a learning point for me, and it's been a good week. It'd been an exceptional week up to yesterday. It dipped to a good week after the draw. If they'd have got a win, it would have been exceptional. But it's not been a bad week at all. It's been a strong, strong week for Arsenal, one where they've sent messages out across Europe about how good they are with that win against Bayern. It would have been lovely to round it off with a win yesterday at the Bridge. But sometimes it just doesn't happen, and it didn't happen yesterday. Player ratings wise, this is what I gave. As you can see, they're not massively high. It wasn't a performance that I was particularly impressed about. If someone asked me, "Are you going to watch the match back?" It's like, no, I didn't enjoy it really in the first time, so I'm not going to watch it back massively. I watched the highlights, but that's about it. Rara gave a 6. Timber was the outstanding defender for me of the 4. I gave a 7. Mosquera and Hincapié, look, it was a tough day for them. Obviously, the Saliba injury, he's going to have a scan, Saliba. Hopefully, that scan doesn't show anything up. He felt something in training. And hopefully the scan shows that it's absolutely nothing serious, and we might see him back. Whether it's be for the weekend, who knows? Whether it be for Brentford, we'll hope, but we don't know. Mikel's got his press conference tomorrow, so we'll probably find out a little bit more from him on Saliba. It is a worry, though, especially if it is another muscle injury, which it sounds like it is, given what Mikel said about it yesterday, that he felt a sensation in training. That sounds like a muscle injury to me. It's another one on top of what's happened with Trossard. Big Gabby, obviously. They're stacking up. They're stacking up, and we really can't afford to be stacking up injuries to key players. But look, Mosquera and Hincapié, it was a tough ask for them, a really, really tough ask. With one of them next to one of the more experienced players, that's fine. But 2 of them sort of thrown into a game like that against a Chelsea team who were in the sort of moment that they were, it was going to be tough. And I thought they were, especially Mosquera, they looked edgy in that first half. Hincapié was trying to talk Mosquera through things at times. I was noticing he was really talking, really going, and Mosquera didn't really look like he was taking it in, or he wasn't really acknowledging what was being said. I just felt like Mosquera was kind of in that moment, and it was so loud, so intense, and he just looked everything was a bit rushed, a bit edgy, I thought, which is no surprise. He was really young. Ultimately, I think they did okay. They did, but you didn't have that. If Arsenal had Gabriel and Saliba yesterday at the heart of that defence, amid all that sort of intensity and physicality, I just feel like they would have coped so much better, and they would have looked far less nervy. And I think the team would have been more settled as a result of that. But I think because of what was going on at centre-back, I just felt like that edginess spread through the team a little bit, because they knew they didn't have that defensive rock at the heart of the back 4 that they usually do. But look, they stood up to it pretty well, Hincapié and Mosquera. And Hincapié obviously nearly got a very brilliant last-minute assist, which didn't quite happen. So I gave those 2 a 6. Calafiori, I thought, struggled a little bit, gave him a 5. Stupid yellow card from him, hooked at half-time. And yeah, I gave him a 5. Zubimendi, I gave a 6. Real running battle, first with Caicedo and then with Enzo, once Caicedo had been sent off at times with Zubimendi. And he just looked like he was getting, you don't normally see Zubimendi getting sucked into things, but you could see they were winding him up. Him and Enzo were just like that at each other the whole time. Zubimendi was going to referee the whole time. Looked a little bit unsettled, which you don't often see with Zubimendi. So I gave him a 6. Rice, I thought, was the Arsenal's best player on the pitch, to be honest. I gave him a 7. Brilliant recovery tackle in the first half from him to deny Pedro Neto. Saka, I gave a 6. Moment of real quality to set up the goal. Eze, Martinelli struggled. Gave them both 5s. Marino a 6. Subs who came on: Odegaard, Madueke, Gyökeres, and Lewis Skelly. I don't think the subs worked. I mentioned this yesterday. I don't think the subs really worked too much. No, not so much all of it. I didn't like the Gyökeres for Eze sub. Just felt like that did not go the way Mikel was hoping for it to go. The game became very stretched after that. You had Gyökeres, I think, had 2 touches when he was on the pitch after coming on with about 20 minutes to go. So the ball wasn't going up to him. It wasn't sticking. The game became very transitional after that. It just looked like it was suddenly very, very stretched. It felt like, to me, if you're going to bring Gyökeres on, maybe if you should have taken Marino off and left Eze on the pitch rather than taking Eze off for Gyökeres. So it just felt like whatever the sort of plan was behind that sub didn't work, and the game became more stretched as a result. So yeah, I mean, doesn't, in midweek, and Bayern Munich, the subs worked a treat, really did, but I just didn't feel like the subs really had that impact, the desired impact last night. Okay, as I said, there was loads and loads of reactions. So I'm going to go through quite a few of these now because lots of you had got in touch. Thank you as always for doing that. Really appreciate your views. Of course, Sam on the Discord says, "Hi Charles, not normally one to criticise Mikel much, but do you think he seemed to be a bit too worked up in the first half? He seemed very heated every time he thought a Chelsea player fouled one of ours, and after seeming much calmer this season generally. We seemed to get sucked into a scrap a bit much rather than playing football, and lack some cool heads, which can happen sometimes. Of course, was just wondering whether you think possible Arteta didn't set the right tone. It might be a bit stretched for me. Just felt unlike us at times today." Yeah, I think it was very hard. It was just such a horrible game. Honestly, Sam, it was. And again, I felt like for the first time in a long time, I've watched the game through Mikel's eyes yesterday because of exactly where I was sitting. And it was just, I'm not surprised he was getting wound up because it just looked like you felt like a player was going to get hurt. There was no football being played. And it was just, I'm not surprised he was a little bit on edge, I have to say. I still feel like Arsenal being a bit sort of more edgy than normal, probably was more to do with the centre-backs than it was to do with Arteta on the touchline. But I do think Arteta has looked a little bit edgy in the last couple of games. Even a Bayern Munich game, I thought he was more like the old Arteta on the touchline than we've seen of late. And I was sitting up, I was on the other side of the stadium, but it was very, very noticeable, I thought. And you saw the referee have to have a word with him in the Bayern Munich game. Marcus says, "Horrible, bitty, niggly game. Arsenal were poor in possession, lots of misplaced passes, wrong options taken. Just didn't seem to have their usual connections. Defended pretty well for most of the time, but still not as solid as usual. Chelsea got away with a lot of fouls, and Caicedo's so dirty, always pulling cheap tricks and dirty players. Glad he got a red. Deserved it." Matt on Patreon says, "Wasn't our best performance, very sloppy, stop-start, especially after Chelsea reduced to 10 men. Saliba's loss didn't help. Can't forget this was only the second time Hincapié and Mosquera have played together. Given the context and difficult week, I think it's a good result. I know the fans want this to be a stress-free season, but football doesn't work like that. We remain top with a decent lead, which, given all the games we played and injuries we've had, is impressive. We take the point and go on to the next game." Matthew says, "Another Chelsea player sent off. Taylor favoured Chelsea although Chelsea had a player sent off, Taylor favoured Chelsea from the start. They kicked us out of our stride. We didn't play well, and a draw seemed a fair result, although it wasn't a fair contest." Jordan says, "Annoying game. Thank God we got a point. I don't think we deserved it. Thought Saka was massively off it. The centre-backs looked pretty nervy throughout. Gutted." A few more now. Chris says, "Hi, Charles. First time writing in. Thank you very much." Says, "I have been tuning in every morning for a couple of years. Know your videos are part of my morning routine. My wife even knows your intro by heart." That's good. "Watch the match on the television. Mosquera looks slow, bit timid. Definitely missed Saliba's experience marshalling the play from the back. Midfielders been placed a lot of passes, gave up possession too easily. Chelsea were a better team, but never seemed that threatening. We showed little more spark after the first goal, but on the day just didn't appear up for it. Normally, I would feel that this would be a damning result, but this season still feels like we can do it. I think we'll take 16 of 18 points remaining this calendar year. I'll take that." Vida, says, "Hi, Charles. What we missed today was defensive mindset. Literally the tenacity of Gabby and Saliba bringing to each game, celebrating each defensive action. At times, it felt like Rice was babysitting our two centre-backs today." Yeah, Rice was constantly sort of dropping back between the two centre-backs and kind of talking them through it at times. Alex says, "I think we were lucky, Charles. If it had been 11 on 11, I think we'd have lost. We certainly missed our two central defenders. Good point in the end. Come on, you Gunners." Finally, some more from Louis, who says, "Hi, Charles. After the week we've had, the back two that never played together, the context of the early yellow cards making it more difficult. Overall lack of security we clearly felt without our two best defenders. Playing against a Chelsea team as buoyant they've been in the last 3 years, I think this is a completely acceptable result. Can't play at our best every single game. We take the point and make sure we beat Brentford." Finest says, "Great point. Chelsea incredibly up for it. They went way over the top at times, but they were all over us, trying to pressure us and the ref. After the week we've had, the team we had on the pitch, it's a good point. Also, Timber took the winner right off Gyökeres' head." This is yet another game we would have lost last season. Context is critical. Finally, Mr. Wilson AFC says, decent point in the grand scheme of things, but disappointed not to win after they went down to 10. Obviously didn't play well enough and they were up for it. Hate to say it, but they deserved at least a point. Mascara and Hincapié did okay considering. Think we missed Trossard. Do you think people have shown a bit more respect now? Caicedo disgraceful. Yeah, I did think we missed Trossard yesterday. No doubt about it. I thought Martinelli looked very rusty. Looked like a player who hadn't started a game for a long, long time. And so, yeah, I think we did miss Trossard and his quality. Unfortunately, Trossard, like so many, are injured. And hopefully we can get some of these injured players back very, very soon, because it would be very nice for the squad and for everyone else. But yeah, thank you everyone for sending in your comments and views. I know there was lots more as well, but I couldn't just put them all together. But I tried to put as many as I could in there to sort of share a different sort of view of what you guys are thinking about the game. So so that's it from me. I know I've sort of rambled away without really being crystal clear in terms of how I felt, but I'm still struggling in my mind to sum up that game. I kind of at that point now where I'm just like, you know what? Let's just move on. It's gone. It's in the rearview mirror now. We didn't lose. It's done. Everyone seemed to get through it unscathed, which is a bonus given how the game planned out. Got a massive game to come on Wednesday. We're in a fantastic position. We're top of the Premier League. We're top of the Champions League. Another one ticked off. Let's go again on Wednesday night. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.